We all want Season 1 of Axie Infinity Origin as soon as possible, but for that to happen, we need to get the game balanced. And balancing a competitive game on this scale can only happen with community input, so I'm putting in my 2 cents. So without further ado, let's get right into it. At the time of recording this video, Origin has been out for almost a month, and we've seen quite a few balance updates in that time. And while the game has improved with each consecutive update, there are still some glaring bugs that need to be fixed. And first on the chopping board is the Spam and Rice Infinite Loop. This exploit involves putting a discount coupon on a draw card, like Blue Moon or Hero, then thinning your deck to the point where there are no more cards in your discard or draw pile, and then spamming that zero-cost draw card until victory. And when optimized with the right teammates and power-ups, you can pull off this exploit by your 3rd turn. This automatically wins to any comp that isn't heavily focused on backdoor attacks or curse cards. But there's actually a very easy fix for this situation. No, the cards or charms don't need to be reworked, rather instead something more internal needs to be fixed. And that is simply the order of operations. Currently, when a card is played, it is automatically discarded before the effect goes off. But instead, if the card effect is procced before the card is officially discarded, that should fix all known issues of the Infinite Loop. Now, this is how most other card games operate, and personally, I don't see any downside to making this change. But what I am absolutely sure of is that reworking the card order of operations is going to be a hell of a lot more difficult than reworking a single card text. And because of that fact, I'm going to practice patience on this one. All right, next up, let's talk about the infamous Sturdy Fighter bug. And first off, I just want to say to all those who are playing the turn 1 Sturdy Fighter bug in the arena, God will forgive you, but I will not. But in all seriousness, let's talk about how this works and how to fix it. The Sturdy Fighter rune allows the bug to utilize 100% of its shield as bonus damage for each of its attacks. And this includes AoE attacks, which is at the heart of the problem. Because if you put a discount coupon on both of your AoE attacks, then you can spend all of your energy stacking up shield, throw out those free AoE attacks, and win the game on your 1st turn. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you all how much of an issue this presents. And you might think this is an easy fix, right? Just remove AoE attacks from getting the bonus damage from Sturdy Fighter. But even without AoE attacks, 1st turn kills are still totally possible. And I could be wrong, but I don't think that 1st turn kills are a particularly healthy thing to have in the game. So how do we fix it? Well, currently Sturdy Fighter gives 100% of shield as bonus damage. That is the biggest damage buff we have in the game. Now, let's compare this to the Endless Anger rune. Endless Anger provides 2 rage every single turn, allowing your beast to enter Fury mode by round 5 completely unassisted. And Fury mode itself only gives you a 75% bonus damage on your attack cards. If you're not using any rage cards or charms, you have to wait 5 turns before getting the Fury bonus from this rune. Now granted, rage itself does grant a damage buff, and you also get an energy when entering Fury mode, but still, the amount of damage bonus you get from this shadows in comparison to Sturdy Fighter, especially considering that you can pull off those combos every single turn. So, I believe that the damage buff that we get from Sturdy Fighter should be reduced to about 75% to match what we see from Fury mode. But if discount coupon and Innate Charms continue to exist in the game, then Sturdy Fighter might need to be reduced all the way down to 60% to completely remove the possibility of turn 1 kills. Now, discount coupon and Innate Charms are another big source of controversy in Axie Infinity Origin right now, with some players going as far as changing their name in-game as a form of protest for these power-ups. And while I am not convinced that these power-ups are inherently broken, I do understand the issues that they present. But recently, a community member by the name of Jaatster recently created a text sheet documenting all the known bugs and glitches in Axie Infinity Origin. The amount of work and dedication put into this document is absolutely mind-blowing, and I recommend you all check it out. Now, Jat recently expressed to me an idea on how to balance these innate charms, and with his permission, I want to share it with you all now. Now, this is still a work in progress, but the idea here is not to remove the utility of innate, but instead to add a negative effect alongside it. The proposition is to add additional text to all the innate charms, which says, draw one less card on your first turn. So if you're using just one innate charm, you'd only draw 4 cards in your first turn. If you're using 2 innate charms, you'd only draw 3 cards in your first turn. And anything beyond 3 innate charms would be random as to what 3 innate cards you draw. This is a really interesting concept. It would allow you to still have that utility of innate and set up those long-term combos for the late game, while also preventing these insane turn 1 7-card combos that we see right now. Now, as I said, this idea is still a work in progress, but I thought it was definitely worth throwing out there. Alright, next up, let's talk about the triple aqua comp. Pure aquas are some of the most overbred and accessible Axies on the marketplace right now. Slap 3 of those together and you've got yourself one of the best teams in Axie Infinity Origin. Now, these teams are so aggressive and so powerful that they can even kill one of your Axies on turn 1. Now, aggro decks are extremely common in almost every form of card game. The strategy is to throw as much damage as possible to your opponent in the early game so that he can never catch up. Now, usually this comes with a significant downside. Focusing so much on the early game means you will not be prepared for the late game. But currently, this is not the case with a triple aqua comp. They are as powerful on turn 15 as they are on turn 1. Now, I believe the reason triple aquas are so overpowered comes down to just 3 cards, and that is Koi, Nemo Ears, and Risky Fish. Now, let's start off the conversation with Koi. Even after the balance patch last week, Koi remains one of the most powerful cards in the game, with 110 base damage and an additional 15 bonus damage for each of your Aqua allies. In a triple Aqua comp, Koi deals 155 damage. Now, let's compare that to some of its competitors, like Sandal or Thorny Caterpillar. Now, both of these cards can deal up to 150 damage, which is very comparable. But in order to deal that much damage, they have very strict guidelines that need to be met. If you were just to play this card turn 1 without doing anything beforehand, it would only deal 100 base damage. Compare that to Koi, where all you need are 2 Aqua allies, and right off the bat, you're dealing crazy damage. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with this, but for a strong, aggressive early game strategy, it needs to be balanced with some sort of late game negative effect, which is why I'm suggesting these changes to Koi. First off, let's change the base damage from 110 to 125. Next off, instead of gaining 15 bonus damage per Aqua ally, it should only gain 10 bonus damage per living Aqua ally. This would give Koi a small but much needed downside. At the beginning of the match, you'll still be dealing the same amount of damage, 155. But after your first Axie is killed, you'd only be dealing 145 damage with Koi. And after your second Axie is killed, that's down to 135. This should add a new level of strategy when building and playing these triple Aqua comps, as well as falling directly in line with the traditional aggro strategy. Now, one of the biggest issues with triple Aqua comps is their ability to OTK, or one-turn kill. Now, in late game, as things are powering up, this is to be expected. But to happen on turn 1, when the player is supposed to be at an energy deficit, doesn't make any sense. Which is exactly why I'm not a fan of the Nemo Ears. This has already been identified as an issue, because Nemo Ears were already rebalanced once. But I don't think it was enough. Now Nemo Ears have Banish, which is in the right direction, but they still give you an energy if used when your Aqua is at full HP. Meaning, if you go second and your Axie is damaged just a little bit, Nemo essentially becomes a dead card. But if you go first, then Nemo is just a free energy, which completely negates the idea that the player who goes first is supposed to be at an energy deficit. And to be perfectly honest, I think having an energy gain card on 2 different body parts is just too much for the game. So I think the energy gain from the Nemo ears should be removed altogether. I think that Nemo should be a 0-cost banish card that simply heals for 50 health. Now you might think that 50 health for a 0-cost card is a lot, but it's a banish card. It's a single-use card. And this would be flipping the script on Nemo. Instead of being a card that only has utility on turn 1, it would instead turn into a card that you would love to see any turn other than turn 1. Alright, now finally, let's talk about Risky Fish. The issue with this card has been apparent since day 1. The idea behind this card is that it's a very powerful single energy cost card, but it comes at the cost of making yourself weak. This is actually a really cool concept for a card, but the problem is that weak only lasts for 2 turns. Meaning, as long as you play Risky Fish as the last card your turn, by the time it cycles back to your turn again, you no longer have weak, and the negative side effects of that card never really affected you. Which is why I think Risky Fish needs to have an initial condition. The base damage of the card should be reduced down to 60, while the effect says, if initial, deal an additional 25 damage and apply weak to this Axie. This would actually allow Risky Fish to deal more damage than it does now, but also have an adequate downside to balance it out. And of course, the same thought process is applied to Risky Beast and Risky Bird as well. And the last item on the docket today is about turn order. Right now, I can see a lot of strategy in building a comp specifically for going first or specifically for going second. But as it stands today, there is only a 50% chance of going the turn your deck was built for. Well, of course it's only 50%. It's a coin flip. That's what it's supposed to be, right? Well, yes and no. There's actually a way to keep it completely fair, still incorporating the 50-50 coin flip, while also giving you a much higher chance of going the turn you want to go. And this is by adding a choice after the coin flip. The coin flip will still go off, and the player who wins the coin flip will then get to choose, do I want to go first or do I want to go second? So you might lose the initial coin flip, but you might still get to go the turn that you want, depending on how your opponent's deck is built. You can actually see this technique being utilized by other card games, and I think it would be a wonderful addition to Axie Infinity Origin. Now again, balancing a game on this scale can only be done with community support, so please let me know what you think of my suggestions. Let me know what you think I've missed. I'm going to be making another one of these videos in a few weeks from now, and we're going to get this game running as smooth as possible. Until then, I'll see you in the arena.